in the 500 square feet, you're doing 300K.
How is that possible when you couldn't even, like, were you just charging a lot, or were you running nonstop classes back to back? Like, how did that even work?
You just can't rely on one marketing strategy, right? You have to have multiple poles in the water. So
here's how you can start a $10,000 a month agency this weekend. It's mass. It's moms as a service. So I'm going to go to you. I'm going to go to Joe Riggio. I'm going to go to Jeff Shoemaker. I'm going to go to all these guys running this model that have 1 million locations. I'm going to hire people in your target demographic. So suburban moms in the 45 to 55 who are going to go and secret shop all your locations. Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I am your host today, John Franklin, wearing the optimistic otter hat because I'm hoping this is going to be a great show. And with me today, I have in the Gym World Worldwide official hat that you can only get by coming on this show, my partner, Mateo Lopez, co-founder of Kilo, a gym management software that is just great. So if you want to know more about that, you talk to Mateo. And then our very special guest today, someone we dragged out of hiding, someone that required many DMs and who rerouted me through assistants and assistants of assistants to get on the calendar, breaking a 4-year silence from podcasts because we love you, Gym World. We dug him out of his hole. We have Joe Meglio of Game Changer. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be on the show. I like listening to it, so this will be fun.
Yeah, you are amongst the Jersey legend list. So I thought, for some reason, I didn't realize you were in Jersey, but I made a post last week just saying it is the most difficult and competitive market. There's just so many good gyms in that northern New Jersey area. And I didn't even know you were hiding in there. And we found out we're Eskimo brothers. We both owned a gym in Livingston, New Jersey. Hope yours did better than ours did. And you actually made money on it because that was the worst location we ever opened. So before we get into the nitty gritty of what you do, how you opened up 7 locations, how you run your business, how you're going to become the first gym trillionaire, let's talk about your humble beginnings, right? Because I think you told me you started out of a room, like literally like a room that's smaller than an apartment.
Pretty much, yeah. So I started out of a baseball facility. I was a baseball player in college, and when I started my business, I just trained athletes. So there was a baseball facility my college coach was working at the time, and I was looking to start my business. So he got me in there, and we started in a room where they used to throw the birthday parties, and that multi-use room that never got used. So we turned that into a gym, and I ran it as my own location. We did that for about 18 months. It was probably 500 square feet. So it was tiny. There was a point probably a year in where we actually knocked down a wall and we gained like what was equivalent of like a closet. So it added like, I don't know, an extra, 50 square feet or something like that. And it was like 10% increase in square footage. So it made a difference at the time. But that's how I started. We started out of there, and I remember we bootstrapped everything. I was driving up and down New Jersey, Long Island to get equipment, to get dumbbells and kettlebells and, all the random stuff like that. So it was fun. It was a good ride of how it started. So, but yeah, that was about 10 years ago. May of 2013 is when it all started in that baseball facility for sure.
Oh, so you started around the exact same time we did. So we were on the up together. We were competing against each other for those Craigslist dumbbells.
Yeah.
So were you small group? Yeah. Well, back then for sure. So were you small group training from the get, or were you personal training in the beginning and kind of worked your way there? What were you doing in the beginning?
So when I started, there really was no model. We had 500 square feet. We wanted to see how many people we could train in there. There was really no business model at the time in terms of what it was. So by nature of the space that we were in, it was small group, especially because we were doing mainly athletes at the time. It probably wasn't until 6 months in or 7 months in that we actually started training adults. And by nature, we were small groups. So we probably did, I don't even remember what the group sizes were back then, probably 6 or 8 that we got into that size room. And at that point, yeah, we were small group by nature, but we were charging like large-ish group prices. We were probably like 200, low 200s per month. But again, there was no rhyme or reason to what we were doing at that time. That all changed probably, I don't even know, maybe 4 or 5 years into the business. But really early on, it was just training, and we evolved from training athletes to adults, and just learned a lot along the way, really. But yeah, so it was small group by nature, I would say.
And how did the model evolve? Because I guess it looked like from videos I've seen, you started with the high school athletes. Do you still train high school athletes? Did you pivot away from that? Why? How did it change over that 5-year period and then to what it is now?
Great question. So to answer your question, do we still train athletes? We still do it at our HQ location. It's a much smaller percentage of what we do. It's not what it once was, 5 years ago and before that. But how did we transition? So we were in that baseball facility for about 18 months to 2 years. I think we were May 2013 till about, it was about 2 years that we were in that facility. And we moved to a 6,000 square foot facility. So we 10x the size of the space that we were in. Why did we do that? We couldn't fit any more adults into that program at that time, with the time slots that we had and everything going on. And we were pretty capped out. So we were really maxed out what we were. I don't remember what our revenue was in that little space. It was probably like 300K or something like that we were doing in that little small space. So we maxed that out.
In the 500 square feet, you're doing 300K?
Yeah, we were tapped out. Like we really squeezed as much juice out of it. I believe we were probably 20 to 25K in revenue, and started getting there pretty consistently in that small space.
How is that possible when you couldn't even, were you just charging a lot, or were you running nonstop classes back to back? Like, how did that even work?
Yeah, we were running nonstop, right? So the morning we were 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. doing small group session on the hour. And then in the evening we were training kids from 3 to 8 or 9 p.m. So yeah, there were probably 10 sessions a day, plus a Saturday. We may have even done Sundays at one point. We had some contracts with some teams. We were in the baseball space, so there were teams that we had contracts with that we would do some stuff out on the turf for periods leading up to baseball season and what have you. So that's pretty much how we ran it.
What kind of rent were you paying in that 500 square foot space?
We were paying. It went up a couple times. I remember waking up one day and the owner just texted me and said, "Hey, your rent is now this." And the air conditioner went out, and he was like, "You want a new air conditioner? You need to pay for it." And he just added it to my rent. So we were probably, I would say, starting
Sounds
out.
like a Jersey landlord.
Yeah. We probably started, I would guess, between 1,000 and 1,500. And at the end, it was probably 2,500 would be my guess. I'm actually curious. I want to go back and look. I have no idea, but those would be my guesses of where it was. And I was so fed up at that point too. Like, we were just looking to move on our own. And we made that switch to the 6,000 square feet space. And at that time we were still athlete heavy. We actually had about a third or a quarter of the space was dedicated to a baseball instructor who I was, friends with. He was actually at the baseball place too. He didn't work there. He did his own thing like I did, and he had his issues too with the owner. So he came on board with me. He was with he ran his business out of our 6,000 square foot place for 3 years. So he took up about a third or a quarter of the space that we were in. So we had that. He was going on. And then we had our athlete stuff and our adult stuff. And then back to your question, Mateo, this is where things started to evolve, because when we made that switch, we were really working with now 3,000, 3,500 square feet of training space. So our groups of 6 turned into groups of 10, turned into groups of 14, turned into groups of 18. And I was like, man, we're kind of losing what it was that, how I started this. And it was me. And then we had a second coach on at a time. Right. And that's really where we started to transition. And I was at a point where I was like, this isn't really what this was. And I was afraid we were going to lose what it was that we did really well, which was, building relationships, coaching people, giving them that personalized experience. So that was really the tipping point of when we started to make the change. And I can go into more specifically about that. That was probably I would say 2016, maybe early 17, when that started to happen. But up until that point, we were really just humming along with the athlete program. We were training adults. It was probably 2 coaches on at most times for like a group up to 20-ish. Of course, you've got your peak times and your non-peak times and what have you, but that's really what it was. But yeah, once we start to get like a 12-to-1 ratio of like coach to member, or 10-to-1, it was like, yeah, this is hard. Like, this is not what, as easy as it once was, especially as you're hiring staff and everything. So we made a pretty big, significant change in our business at that point. I remember I was at a Thomas Plummer event, I want to say, and he was talking about really the semi-private route. And I did some coaching calls with him, and he was all about like the 4-to-1 ratio, right, of doing the semi-private. And I was like, man, I just don't think that's good. Like, I was looking at the numbers of members we had, sessions we had, coaches we had. I was like, there's literally no, like, we did this, there's no way that it would work. We would have to hire this many more coaches. We have to have this much more payroll. It made no sense at all. So we ended up deciding going 6-to-1 at that point. And I think later on, it might have been a different event or whatever, I came across Rick Mayo, who was doing the same thing. And I was like, wow, there's someone out there who thinks like I think, right? So I connected with him pretty instantly because we just were running the same models, and I didn't know of him before that. And he was the only person I knew doing what we were doing, like that 6-to-1 ratio since 2016 or whatever it was. So him and I hit it off, and he's been a great resource and friend. But that's really where it started to shift. Is we were in that little tiny space, 500, 600 square feet, whatever it was. We 10x the size. Our membership base grew. We were starting to lose our special sauce, and structurally, I knew things needed to change. So we made some pretty big shifts. I could get more into that or what have you. But long story short, that's how it all happened.
So what kind of coin were you making before you moved? Doing 25 in top line in a 500 square foot space with one part-time employee.
Yeah, it was, what was that? I mean, it was 6 figures I was making, right? Like I definitely crossed the 100K mark, which, when I left my previous job to start my business, I remember I was like, oh man, if I could just make like 10K a month in revenue, I'll be set for, right? That's where my head was at, May of 2013. And then we got there probably like in the fall, right? And then we just kept doing that. So, in terms of take home, yeah, I think before we made the switch, I was taking home over 100,000. Things were good. I was probably 20, I started my business when I was 23, right? So I was 24, 25. It was more money than I made before, working really as like a part-time coach. You guys know how it is in the industry. I didn't really have a full-time career before I started my business. I was trying to, get by and do what I needed to do. So it was definitely, things were good. But I always wanted more for myself. I like to challenge myself and see what I could do. But it was good for that point in my life. It was really good.
All you gym owners out there saying you need $200,000 to start your gym, you got to go do something fancy. This is proof you can start with subletting 500 square feet. Not as crazy as Giancarlo, who has the craziest story, who just made his bedroom his initial gym. But I love these stories where you just start really scrappy and just, pass that 6-figure mark before actually starting like an actual gym. So love that you were able to bootstrap your way there.
It was,
it's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good ride for sure.
Low risk way to do it. Do you remember that story with David when he told it, when he was like, oh yeah, my landlord was like, your rent change. And then he was like, oh yeah, your rent change. And now you got to pay for the AC. It reminded me, there was in Bowery, which was our New York gym where Teo was the manager. I remember we were going back and forth with the landlord over some $2,000 knickknack where we thought he should pay it. He thought we should pay it. And I don't know how many texts does it usually get would it be to get some time with David back in the day?
Yeah, it would be tough. You have to go through Easy Ricky first. Easy Ricky was the gatekeeper. So I had to talk to him first, and then maybe you could get a hold of David. Certain things you would, like we had a leak one time, like he acted right away, but well, yeah, or paying him, or like I said, the leak, he acted pretty quickly, but for other things, it was tough.
I remember for this specific knickknack, I was there with you and you came down and you were like making your case. And then it was like in the middle of the 5:30 class and he just put his hand out like this and he's like, Look at this fucking place. $2,500. Who cares?
Look,
You're gonna
look
make
how
so
much
much
money
fucking
you're
money.
making. Look
You're
how
gonna
much
make
money
so
you're
much money.
making.
Look at all this money. Don't worry about it. And then he asked if he could take some flooring from the gym to put it under his kid's playhouse. And that was the beginning of the end for me. I'm like, I'm ready to get out of here. So yeah, we definitely feel the jerk in your chain elements of the Northeast landlording. So you got out of the hood. What's the flagship location? So it's Springfield.
It's in Springfield. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly a terrible location. Like, you couldn't find us if you tried. It's a warehouse that's buried in it's like 6,000 square feet inside of a 100,000 square foot warehouse building, and it's like extremely hard to find. So it's funny just knowing the business that we built there. But yeah, it's hard to find. It's off Route 22, which, if you guys are, I don't know how familiar you are with Route 22 being in Jersey, but like, nobody wants to drive on that road, and we were tucked back in like a warehouse off of 22. So it's not a location I would sign up for today, but back then, when you just don't know any better and ignorance is bliss, it worked. So that's our flagship one that we're still at today. And
so how many locations are we at now? This looks like 7, but eight's on the way, or? We've got, as of February 5th, we're going to officially open our 7th one. So that's next Monday. That will be Warren. And then we have leases signed for 8 through 12. So that will all be this year. So it's going to be a busy year. There's no doubt about that. So, but we'll be 7 February 5th. And what are like the unit economics? Like, what is the model now? Because I'm looking through some of these, and like the spaces look kind of different in size in some cases. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong pictures, but yeah, what kind of a space do you look for? And then when's a facility like at capacity? You're ready for the next one, because the schedules also look different too on some of them. Yeah, so they really are mostly more or less the same size, except for our flagship one, which is 6,000 square feet. All the other ones are between, on the low end, 1,400, and on the high end, 2,000, right? The model is the same at all of those, regardless of if it's on 1,400 or 2,000. It just really depends on where we are and, what we were able to find in real estate. If it fits our rent factor, and all of that. So that size-wise, they all are relatively similar, other than the flagship one. Funny story, the one that I bought in Maryland, that was the second one. Again, this was at a time where we had a model, but it wasn't like the dialed in model that we have now. This was 2000, end of 17. I want to say it's really like a year into that transition that we made. That was 4,000 square feet at one time. We downsized that during COVID to half the size. So that's at 1,800 square feet. That fits the same size as all the other ones. So size-wise, they're all pretty much the same size, except for the headquarters ones, and all the ones that we've signed leases on all fit within that same range of 1,400 to 2,000 square feet. So size-wise, that's it. The unit economics are not going to be that different than what you guys have heard in the past, right? This past year, we've, our average studio that's been open, let's see, our revenue for 2023 was around $3 million, and that was based off of mainly 5 studios, plus our Livingston one opened up this past year, right? So our average revenue per studio, depending on how you look at it, 500 to 600 if you factor in the Livingston one. We opened our Short Hills one in November, so that barely factored into our revenue numbers. So that's where our top line revenue is. Location wise, yeah, we're like, when we project out future locations, and we're not looking at like the best case scenario, we're looking at like, if this performs at a good level, maybe not like the best of the best, we're looking at 500K in top line is where we would want to be. That's really like a good baseline for us, even though that we accomplished that with all of our existing beyond that. And then profit margins high on these things, as you guys know. You're talking about 40% profit margins, right? If you can keep your payroll in check at around 30% or less of the revenue, your rent in check 15% ish of the revenue, you're going to be, have some really solid margins on all these businesses. So, I see you got the locations pulled up on a map here, and something too that I could share as we opened up more. You'll see that a lot of them, at least the Jersey ones, are really
densely. They're close to each
Yeah,
other.
they're close together. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I was going to
I'll
say,
speak to that in a second.
where's
I can give
you
some
said you had one
into
in
that.
Maryland?
One in Maryland, yeah. So that was the second one. I didn't start that one. I bought that one back in 2000, like the
This
end
looks
of
like a bar.
17. Yeah, that's not
That's not
there.
it.
It is. Yeah, no changers.
The wings.
Known for its happy hour and fried shrimp. I don't think that's you.
Bel Air, Maryland. Bel Air, Maryland.
All right.
The ones in New Jersey that are close by, there's really two reasons why we do that. We see that roughly 80% of our members will come from the town that we're in and the next town over. So like Livingston, it's 80% come from Livingston and West Orange. The other 20% will be spread out amongst the close towns. Short Hills, it's Short Hills and Summit, right? Madison, it's Madison and Chatham. So when we look to go into a market, we look to see what markets we're not tapped into. That was something, again, maybe I'm getting out ahead. I don't know if you guys want to talk about this or not, but for the Short Hills one, for example, that's like in between like three of our locations. But no one from Short Hills likes to drive to Route 22. And they don't drive to Madison because they avoid Main Street. So New Jersey is funny where you got like these pockets where people are just going to stay within 2 to 3 miles of a location, 7 or 8 minute drive time of a location. They don't cross over train tracks or they don't drive to certain towns or whatever. So how we look to expand was really based upon whether or not we were tapping into some markets, so that's why some of them are geographically close to each other, as you see on the map.
And for those of you guys watching, these are all like, this is just the hardest area to open a gym. Like these are all, he's just doing this in a very, very, very difficult place. I like the idea of having them clustered than just having a random approach to where you go next. Is 8 through 12 going to be within the cluster? Or are you going crazy and opening gyms all over?
You're building new clusters in new spots.
Let's start building out a little bit. We have a second one going in Maryland. That will be in Timonium, Maryland. That's probably about 30 minutes from our Bel Air location. And then the other ones are going to be in New Jersey, as far south as Hillsborough. And all the other ones are, they're mostly outside of that cluster, except for the one in Berkeley Heights. That's going to be within that cluster as well. Outside of that, we'll have one in Chester, that's like 20 minutes from our Bernardsville one. So outside we're expanding the cluster is what we're doing. South Orange as well, that kind of fits in the cluster as well. So a little bit of both to answer your question, John. Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like these are a little more branded than some of the other ones that we've seen. Some of the other people trying to do this concept, like 4 or 5 of the locations. I'm guessing they're later on seem like you can tell they feel the same, where the Bel Air one looks a little different than the Springfield one, then looks a little different than this cluster one. Like, how are you thinking about branding? Because a lot of times it seems like some of this is piecemeal, where some of these later locations look like you have it a little more dialed in.
Yeah, the first two were, there was really no intentionality. Like the second one, when we bought that location, it's a garage in Bel Air, Maryland, right? Like it's beyond me how that, if we're not successful because of the location that we're in or the branding that we have down there, right? It's all the relationships. Just any of these locations are like that. But yeah, the first one, the warehouse, and the Bel Air one, the garage, they are not the prototypical game changer. You won't see those as much on our Instagram and what have you, right? All the other ones are that branded look that you guys saw. We went through a rebrand around the same time all these transitions happened, probably end of 2017. I'll just use that as a time frame. Since I had my kids, I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Time is like, I don't even know like what happened when. My brain doesn't remember like it used to, but it was around that time where we rebranded our everything, like our logo. My original logo was like, I remember I was talking to my designer and it was like a silhouette of like Rocky with his arm in the air, right? Like again, New Jersey thing. But it's like I didn't know what what a brand was or anything like that. So we rebranded in that same time frame where we really kind of overhauled everything. And since then, you'll see there's a distinct look to all of the game changers, right? That a lot of that is built off of we're just more clear on who we are. We're clear on what our key service is. We're clear on who our client avatar is. It's at 40 and over, mostly female, right? So everything is designed with that in mind. Everything is it's not supposed to feel like a gym that just opened up down the street, right? The idea is that we're building a brand that, like looks like it's a national brand, right? Even though we're not there yet, but we're looking to build that foundation. So that's really, that was really the intent behind it, is to help, with that brand as we continue to grow and expand, because we are going to open up more. So everything we do moving forward will be more in line with the last 4 that you've seen, not the first 2.
Speaking of clients and avatars, how many do you need to, sell out a facility? How do you package and price? And then a separate follow-up is, I see you're opening up a new one in February. What are your kind of, how do you launch a facility? How do you attract and sell for new facilities to get it, a good pre-sale going?
Yeah, so feel free to hit on anything I don't hit in my response. But yeah, when we look to max out a facility, if we're at about 130, 140, that's really where our max is. At that point in time, we're pushing probably over 80% utilization on a schedule that has 50 plus sessions on it on a weekly basis. We find that there's a point of diminishing return on adding more sessions, right? As you might imagine, you add a 2 p.m. or a 3 p.m. doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get more members into the facility. So we find that a sweet spot for us is in that 130 to 140 range in terms of members. When we're launching a studio, the break even is going to be depending on the rent factor and all that. And there are some variables we can control, but we really look at like 70, 75 as a really solid break even point, where if we can get our pre-sale to open with that many members, or we can ramp up shortly after the launch, that's really where we're going to be open. We're going to be profitable, right? And the gap between 75 and 130, the costs are mostly the same, right? You're going to have incremental increase in payroll, but outside of that, you're not adding a significant expense as you go from 70 members up to 120, 130, or what have you. So the ramp up is definitely, really important, that pre-sale process that you mentioned. So we'll typically be a 3-month process where we're pre-selling, and that happens during our build out, and we're signing up what we call founding members. So that's going to be really the key during that time. So yeah, this is an example of one of the landing pages.
Looks a little familiar to me, this landing page. What do you think, John?
Yeah, of course. I'm always looking for busy adults. Everyone's been looking for a while.
Everyone's
40,
looking for these 100.
Everyone's been looking for 100 adults. Been for a while. There's just a lot of fit pros just out there searching.
Sorry, so I cut you off. So what's 3 month? Like you start marketing 3 months ahead, and then I guess what's the offer?
Yeah, it's really, there's not a hard offer. It's just for founding membership. So you guys see it here. There's really we'll run Facebook ads. It will have similar copy as that, but we're looking for, 100 members, locking at our lowest rates ever, and so forth. So all it's driving to a phone call. There's really 2 parts of that marketing strategy. Part of it is we're running paid ads mainly on Facebook, Instagram. And then the other side of it is we're boots on the ground. We're getting out in the community. We're getting involved with the local chamber of commerce. We're a local business, so we have to get involved and act like a local business. So there's really 2 sides of that marketing plan. And we do that with all of the locations as we go into a new market.
There's a lot of gym owners we talk to who are like, Facebook ads are dead or they don't work anymore. It seems to be a pretty critical part of your, launch strategy. How much are you spending on ads to get a facility launched? And then do you continue to spend, after you've been open for a while?
Yeah, good question. We'll spend about $100 a day. We'll scale that up or down based on performance and cost per lead and what the cost per acquisition is on that lead. So that's a baseline for us. And I would say for us, it's interesting. Facebook ads perform really well during the pre-sale, and we'll milk those ads as long as we can. Even if we're open, we'll continue to run pre-sale ads if they're performing well. Once we transition away from that, that's where our conversion numbers do go down. It's interesting. Really doesn't matter what the offer is, and what have you. And one of the challenges we have with our cluster setup is that could be a bit of a challenge as well, because some of the location, it's just weird. Like our Livingston one actually is one of our better performing ones from a lead standpoint, right? Compared to like Madison or Bernardsville. There's really seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. But yeah, I would say the pre-sale is usually a more effective time to run ads. And then once we open, or once those ads run dry, even if we are open at that point, it's, we transition out of it, and it's not the same level of conversion that we have at that point. So it's interesting. And that's why, you just can't rely on one marketing strategy, right? You have to have multiple poles in the water. So that's one of the things that we do, but it's certainly not the only thing that we do during that time and when we're open as well.
I'm trying to stalk you on Facebook here. Are you guys running, you guys run individual pages, or you just have a brand page?
We just have a brand page. We might have some individual pages, but we've all consolidated that down. I think that was something in my business that we adjusted probably on location 3, where we were really we were one brand, but we were really running 3 separate locations in a lot of ways. Like the programming was the same, the training system was the same, but when we came to sales and marketing and all that, there wasn't as much of a centralized resource or hub as there is now. Now everything really runs through, our that centralized, support structure that we have. But before that, it was more divide and conquer. So we might have individual pages, but this is the one we actively use.
Okay, so you don't have to do 7 different social media posts or anything like that. And then for your ads, I'm guessing you just do the targeting through. So you'll just do location-based targeting, and it's all run from the same page.
Yep. Yeah. Same ad account. Exactly. Yeah. That wasn't always that way, but again, you think about what's the economies of scale of what you're doing. How could you better deploy your resources? And, there's a point in time where it makes sense to switch and to consolidate things.
Okay. So there you can see it's Warren, Bel Air. Yeah. All right, cool. Fit over 40. Still looking for those 100 women down there. Still searching.
Haven't found them. We're still looking.
Haven't found them. We're on the hunt. $100 a day to solve this problem. And do you own 100% of this?
Yeah, so that's a good thing we could talk about. So the first location, I own 100% of that. Location 2, that was the Bel Air one. I only did that deal because there was a good team member down there that was going to be the operator, right? So I brought one of the coaches on at that existing location as a partner to run that location. It's 2.5 hours away from me, and I didn't plan on going down there all the time, especially in case of an emergency. So for me, having a partner down there was something that I wanted that buffer. Something similar with the next 2 locations, 3 and 4 as well. So of the first 4 locations, I have 3 partners. Then at that point, really, we built enough of an infrastructure, and their roles also are changing where they want to help grow the whole company. So right now, I own the remaining ones, 5, 6, and 7, and everything beyond, just because my vision has changed. And, the way I used to think about things back when we were 2 locations, 3 locations is not how I'm thinking about it today. Right. So that's changed from that standpoint. So, and we also needed it back then, right? I needed someone who was going to be, the face of that business day to day, right? Where they were going to, be the owner of that local business. Now, it's not to say we don't need that, but we just have more resources, and we've got a bigger support system to support these new locations that, I think we've evolved from that, but it certainly was really effective at getting those locations super profitable and, built up, especially think about COVID, right? Everything that happened there. So yeah, things have evolved. As you can see, that's a common theme. We're always evolving, and growing how we do things. But moving forward, I'll own all of the game changers. But I do have some existing partnerships.
Speaking of partners and staff, how many staff members do you need to, operate a facility? And then how do you compensate that? I know you mentioned the percentage of revenue. Maybe you can touch on that again. Specifically on your careers page, I saw some pretty cool and exciting things like come work for us, 401k. I saw dental on there. That's pretty fancy for a gym and a coach at a gym. So how do you staff a location? How do you compensate people? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, great question. So when we open up a new studio, new location, we need certainly what we call a head coach. That's the face of the location, right? So they're probably coaching 25 sessions a week, and the other 15 hours they're handling administrative stuff or, other things that come with that territory, member reach out, that type of stuff. So the head coach we need in place for a new location. To supplement them, depending on how our pre-sale goes, we're going to need a part-timer who's going to cover 2 evening shifts and a Saturday, and the goal of that part-timer becoming a full-time team member. As membership grows and we need to add more sessions, we'll add more nighttime sessions or what have you. So that's typically what it takes to start a location. It's like 1 to 1.5 coaches, right? Up to 2 if we're full steam ahead. So even at our most, aside from HQ, because that's a different animal, it's bigger. That's we have it's a little different. But the model itself, it's 2 team members at most, a head coach and a full time coach there. And starting out, it may be a head coach and a part-time coach. So that's the structure at the location level. Now the centralized side, I don't know. I need to think maybe you guys come up with a better word than corporate side, but for that side, that's staffed differently. That's really the side that I sit on, right? But on the location side, it's exactly as I described. There's no front desk. These locations are smaller, so the coach is always going to greet you when you come in, that type of thing. In terms of how we structure it, our head coach is on a salary, and they have variable comp based on the revenue of that location. So there's different tiers of revenue, and there's quarterly bonuses paid out depending on what revenue we have. And then benefits wise, all of our team members get we cover their health insurance, the full premium on our base level plan. They can upgrade their plan and pay the difference if they want a higher level plan. But we offer that. We pay half the dental, vision, eye insurance, I believe it is. 401k, do a 3% match, whether they contribute or not, don't contribute to their 401k, and PTO. Everyone has PTO. So those would be the benefits that they have and how we structure it for the head coaches. The other coaches are paid hourly.
How do you do PTO if there's only 2 coaches at a location?
Yeah, we'll borrow from.
Or if someone gets sick, who fills in?
Yeah. So there's 2 answers to that. We'll borrow from another location, or the whoever that the head coach reports to can also step in. So depending on when that happens and all, those would be the situations.
So do you have a regional person?
Exactly. Yeah, like a regional operations manager. Yep, that all the head coaches report to. He can help fill in as needed. Also, these locations, especially because they're close by. You can in the event that someone needs coverage, we have coaches who do coach at multiple studios. So, I'll give you an example. Our Bernardsville full-time coach, she coaches probably 30 hours. She works a total of 30 hours in Bernardsville. She's our part-time coach in Warren, so she'll coach the 2 evening shifts there in Warren as well. So sometimes a coach can coach at multiple studios, especially if they want more hours than that one studio can provide. And, for them, I think getting back to the team member stuff, there's that ascension, which is important, right? So any coach we hire, my goal for them is to want to become a head coach. We're going to have more studios that we're going to open. I would love to promote from within whenever we can. That's not always the case. We do have to hire from the outside. At times, it's what we've done a lot recently. But ultimately, that's my goal for everyone, is that they want to become a head coach.
How are you going to do quality control as you expand? And what is the management layer now that you so far have in place and are planning on expanding and building out? I know you mentioned your partners from other gyms too that are maybe, it sounded like, coming into this upper management level. So yeah, how is that all going to work?
Yeah, so let's talk about the other side. You got the field side, right? The location side. It's really straightforward. We have got a head coach. We've got some support coach at that location. On the upper management side or what have you, how do we keep quality control? Well, there's a lot of things that we do. I would say there's a lot of systems and structures in place that allow for that. So one, we have our regional operations, manager, which is Rob. He's one of my partners. So he oversees most of the New Jersey locations, right, where the head coaches are reporting to him. He meets with all the head coaches one-on-one weekly. So that helps ensure quality control. He does site visits to each location where there's things that we're looking for. He's taking a session with the coach. We have a scorecard. He's filling out the scorecard based on how the coach did. He's doing a walkthrough. So there's a process to the site visits that happen weekly, and he's meeting with the head coaches one-on-one. And then we have our training manager who he hires and onboards all of our new staff. And he'll also do site visits specifically with the new hires during their first 60 to, up to their first 60 or 90 days. So he's watching more specifically with the new staff. And then, that allows Rob to really focus on the locations as a whole. So that's really where that happens. And then the head coaches lean on each other, in our Slack channel. If they have issues and questions and situations, it's like a mastermind, right? Where they can lean on each other. And then we have a weekly head coaches meeting where that really is our platform to ensure that, we're communicating the same message. We can help troubleshoot things together. So it's just another structure that allows for that teamwork to happen. So not everyone feels siloed. So that quality control definitely comes in the form of structured meeting cadences, site visits that are happening. Those would be the other things. And my wife is she's great for this. So she'll work out a Game Changer 2 or 3 days a week. She's got, impeccable attention to detail. She's got no problem telling me if something is off, and, we communicate that down the chain as needed. So she's awesome, quality control as well. And so, but yeah, I think it does start with that upper management holding that standard and just really, knowing what's expected and making sure that we really push for that across with all head coaches and everyone on the team.
And what's the new location again? The Short Hills?
That's the one we opened up in November. The newest one will be Moore, and that's what we're opening up on Monday.
Okay, so let's say the one that's open up on Monday. Let's say we're in the summer, so we've done our grand opening sale. Things are going pretty well, but now we're at like 90 members. We still need to get to 130, 140. And the head coach is like, people seem to be happy, but I need more sales to get to one. Who gets the phone call? Who's in charge of getting him more leads? Or maybe you are getting enough leads and he's not selling, or she, how does that work up the pipeline?
Our head coaches actually don't, they do elements of sales, but they're not doing outbound calls to our Facebook leads or whatever. Centralized resource for that. Mike, again, one of my partners, he's really sitting in that sales seat where he's mainly doing that. And we've evolved this even in the last couple of months, right? Before that, it was more divide and conquer where, we had Rob and JT, and they both oversaw, Mike, they oversaw certain locations. They handled the sales at those locations, and a lot of it, and they did the regional management stuff. For the breakdown of that, was 80-20, right? Because 80% of the time you're going to be spending time doing sales and all that stuff, and the management was 20. Because at the end of the day, we're not running restaurants. These aren't hard businesses to manage, right? There's not inventory. There's not food that you're dealing with and everything like that. So these are easier businesses to manage. So these are some of the changes that we made where we're putting team members in more defined roles versus, hey, you're doing sales and management and all that. So yeah, Mike really handles our sales, especially for all of our new studios. He's moving away from the management side of things and fully sitting in that seat. And we have we have him in that role. We have another team member who assists with that, really with the appointment setting and what have you. So yeah, we've got a dedicated centralized resource that handles that. Our head coaches are more in charge of asking for referrals, converting trials, that type of stuff. So that's really the plan that they have. They have to get involved in the community and do events and things like that, but it's just a different element in how they're involved in that.
So it sounds like a sweet gig for them.
You're not managing inventory, but you're managing fields, which is a lot worse,
That's true too. Yeah.
So here's my my business idea. I'm not going to do it, but if you're a listener, here's how you can start a $10,000 a month agency this weekend. So here it is, Joe. It's mass. It's moms as a service. So I'm going to go to you. I'm going to go to Joe Riggio. I'm going to go to Jeff Shoemaker. I'm going to go to all these guys running this model that have 1 million locations. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to hire people in your target demographic. So suburban moms in the 45 to 55 who are going to go and secret shop all your locations. They're going to call, they're going to try and get something booked. They're going to come in for a class. They're going to use the bathroom. They're going to talk to the other moms. And then once they do that, they're going to write a report. and and if the report is bad, I'm going to give it to you. And that's going to save you way more than the $2,000 a month I'm going to charge you to, audit each location every month. And if it's good, I'm going to incentivize that person to, post about it in the local moms group, and then write you a rave review and bring you in a whole new stream of business. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea. I like it. At first sound, I like it. That's good. I don't know if $2,000 a month is what I pay for it, but I like it. As
7 locations, man. I gotta find 7 moms in 7 different cities and they gotta write reports. What's a member worth to you?
Per location. That's not
no. For the whole shebang. For the whole shebang.
Okay, I like it.
It's a rounding error. If I save you one member, if one mom tips you off and I save you one member, I'm paying for myself.
Yeah,
well, Deborah's paying for myself, but
I like it. Those local mom groups are a key part of our marketing strategy. So I like how you have that covered as well.
Yeah, you got to get in there, because I can't get in there. I need boots on the ground, and that takes influence, and that costs money, or Stanley Cups. I don't know if you got a bunch of Stanley Cups, we can probably work something out. I noticed you're not active on social. Your gym, like, you post sometimes, but it doesn't look like it's a huge part of your thing. Like, how do you view and think about like blog posts and social strategy? Because I think a lot of gym owners might overemphasize the importance of it when it comes to running a successful location.
Yeah. So I certainly don't handle our social media, as you guys might guess. But I think that here's where I think it actually plays the most is someone is Googling you. Maybe they do come across your Facebook ads. They may go check out your Instagram, right? So I think it can help in the sales process. And I think that's probably where a lot of gym owners go wrong, especially if you're servicing different markets, right? Because they go to your Instagram and they see things on there that are not what they're looking for, right? So I think that it can help move the sales process along. I would say we probably don't generate a lot of leads from our organic social media, like if it's just us posting and we're doing stories and reels and all that stuff. But I think what it does, I think it can help move somebody who's going to opt in or has opted in along in the sales process. So I think it's something that, look, if you've got the bandwidth, I think you should do it. But if you're strapped and you have to look at what your options are and where you're going to spend your time, it's probably not first on the priority list. But, it's also the concept of who, not how, right? Like, if you're not good at it, that I'm a big proponent of that, right? Like, I certainly don't need to have my hands in everything in the business, and I don't have to be the one who's doing everything, especially things that I'm not good at and don't like doing. So I think, is it something that you could outsource? Is it something that you could delegate to someone else? And so it just depends. Everyone's situation is different, but for us, I think it probably just helps in the in the sales process. I mean, I think we've got a lot of capacity and bandwidth, so we are pretty proactive with doing outbound DMs, right, to people who engage with our stuff, who follow us and all that. But I mean, if it was me and I I wouldn't be the one doing that, put it that way, right? So I think it just depends on the gym owner and what their strengths are. And at the end of the day, you have to have different ways that you get members, and organic social media is one way, right? I think just having a presence on there, it's certainly it's only gonna help, right? You got to look at the things you can do, and that's certainly one of them. But I think it just depends on your skill set and where you spend your time and what you're able to delegate and what have you.
So what's your sauce? What's the thing that you're the boss at? Not a lot of people scale to this many locations or that level top line. I'm guessing bottom line is approaching, if not passing, 7 figures based off of what some of these locations do before you take into consideration like reinvestment into the new location. So, what do you attribute to getting this far?
I think the structure and organization, I think for me, that was really important. I used to do a lot of consulting in the fitness business space. And I think for me, for us, EOS was a game changer, right? Like having that structure in place where we have a weekly scorecard, where I was able to build a vision where other team members wanted to be part of that vision because they could live their life in our vision for our business, right? And they had a pretty sweet gig, right, in a career in fitness where that's not easy to find. So I think I think the thing that I do well is that I think having the structure, the foundation in place where a lot of people are just trying to think of new ideas and they're avoiding the things that they really need to do with just, squirrel brain ideas, which I get because I was there at one point. So I think the ability to say no and focus on what matters most is something that's really important, especially as you're scaling, right? That's super important, especially as you're scaling up. And the who, not how mindset. I can't stress that enough. I think a lot of gym owners get in their own ways. I know I have at times. And, when you can't have both control and freedom at the same time, right? So knowing that you need to get the right people on the bus in the right seats, and you can't do everything in your business. You have to relinquish control, and you have to get people that are better at things than you. And for some people, I think that could be a limiting factor because maybe there could be an ego involved. There could be an insecurity involved. So I think just, realizing like you can't do it yourself and that the business isn't about you. That's one thing I had no problem with. Like, again, I don't have a social media presence because I tend to avoid that type of stuff. So I stay away from it. But I think the ability to focus, I think the ability to, select the right team members, get them, give them the autonomy to do what needs to be done in the business and not be afraid to change and evolve. Even though we are scaling, we're always looking for better ways to operate and do things. And it's not always new ideas or, better ways to program in order to achieve that.
The only other thing I don't think we actually touched on the actual service. Is it like 6 people come in and they're all in their same program, or is it templated? A little bit of both.
It's a good question. It's templated, right? So if you go to any Game Changer any day, everyone's on the same core program. We adjust. We have the training system, is designed so that we adjust that programming based on current level of fitness, injuries, right, and preferences. So that's really how it's designed for our members. So we don't have, members aren't, and honestly, like the people we service, they don't want to hold a clipboard and look at their workout and record their weights. They just want to show up, be told what to do, not have to think. And that's what we provide, right? So that's how we structure the training system. So yeah, it's templated, it's adjusted based on those factors. And we and that all plays into your marketing, right? It's why we do Fitness Over 40, because you see certain, 80% of the members have the same tendencies. They have the same goals, they have the same issues, right? So we design everything with all of that in mind. And, from our marketing to how we service members, it's all integrated. I think that's an important part. If you're going to run a successful business that scales, without that, it's who is your training system actually designed for? Right. And if it's super custom, that's fine. That's great. But then, how are you going to scale that? Right. And if you're not looking to scale, that's okay too. Right. Everyone's got a different goal of what they want their business to be. So I think just knowing what you want out of your life and your business definitely plays a role in that. So that's a long answer to your question. But up to 6 members, it's templated and we adjust based on certain criteria.
And I guess going back to the secret sauce question, because it sounds like social media is important. You post on there, but it's not like a driving force for your growth. You mentioned Facebook ads are important for a launch, but then they aren't the sole driver of continued growth once a facility is open for a while. You did touch on kind of the in-person stuff, the referrals. You mentioned Chamber of Commerce. What are some of the boots on the ground strategies that you're using? A head coach goes to, I don't know, parking lot of a grocery store and hands stuff out? Or is it that people are, like you said, Chamber of Commerce? What are those strategies?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And something I mentioned the word EOS. So our scoreboard for our head coaches are leading indicators, right? I could go on a tangent on all of this, but you've got leading indicators, you've got lagging indicators. The lagging indicators are things that, we all heard about. What's your revenue? How many leads did you get? How many appointments, how many trials, members, right? How many members did you churn through in a month, right? So you need that information, but that's all what I would consider like lagging information, right? If I look at last week's leads, that's not leading of what's going to come in the pipeline. So with our head coaches specifically, we shoot for leading indicators on a scorecard. So each week we're tracking the fundamentals. How many referrals did you ask for this week? How many reactivation reach outs did you have? How many member meetings did you have last week? Because we know in those one-on-one member meetings, you're more likely to ask for referrals and you're more likely to do those type of things. It's a retention indicator, right? So we use more leading indicators for the head coaches. And again, instead of throwing a bunch of shit at a wall and hoping it sticks, we'll focus on the fundamentals, right? It starts with asking for referrals. So if I was speaking to a gym owner and you want to know what you could do, I think just putting a simple scorecard in place for yourself where you're tracking like, how many referrals did I ask for last week? And you measure that number, you're gonna get more organic leads just from doing that alone, or referral leads from doing that alone. And what's cool about all the locations we have, we do that in a format where if I'm a head coach, I've got to report that in front of all these other head coaches, right? So there's that accountability and that peer-to-peer accountability that's really powerful. So, going back to your questions before about quality control, it's all these little elements that factor in to that. But yeah, that's where I would start. What are those activities that you want to be doing or need to be doing? And then are we measuring that? Are we tracking that? To me, that's the most important thing to do. And also it's hard for our head coaches to get involved in the chamber and all that because they're coaching morning shifts typically, right? So they have time in the evening or on a Saturday or what have you, but that's where they get support from that, that regional manager to help with that as well. And the sales team, they can also be boots on the ground as well. But yeah, it could be, how many Facebook posts did we make? There's, how many out, there's no shortage of things you could track. I think it's just finding what you can reasonably hold someone accountable to doing.
Well, that was my question too, because, and you kind of touched on it, if this head coach has a lot of responsibilities, how are they squeezing in one-on-one, check-ins with current members? How does that usually, I know it's getting pretty granular, but I'm curious.
I think it's important to define what that is. So for us, that's not like a 60-minute one-on-one meeting that happens in person necessarily. Okay. So it could be, in top tier, we're doing it in person, right? Next tier would be, okay, we're doing it over Zoom. Third tier is we're doing it over the phone, right? Fourth tier is like, hey, we're going to do a check-in in between sessions because this, and not all of our members want to meet with us anyway, right? Right. I think that's a challenge because we sometimes think we need to do things because members really value it. Not all members value that either. But the one we really place a priority on it with newer members to really get them onboarded and ingrained in the community. And then the members that do want to do it ongoing, we do it as well, but we don't force it. But those are typically 15-minute meetings that could happen after their coaching shift, later in the day, or whenever. Really, they don't have to be in person meetings. So that's also important.
Sweet.
Joe, this has been rad. I am excited to see how location 8 to 12 go for you. If people are interested in your scorecard, Game Changer, where are they going to find out more information?
It's a good question. You could, I'm on Instagram. I don't even know what my handle is. It's probably at Joe Meglio, I'm guessing. But yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me via email would be the best way to get a hold of me, joe@gamechangergym.com. That will get filtered by my assistant, John. And that'd be the best way to get in touch with me for sure.
Well, this has been awesome. We're going to check in with you next year to see how it's gone. And that's a wrap for this week's Gym World Worldwide. Be sure to like, subscribe by Kilo, and leave a hateful comment. We will see you next week.